My name is Jerry Reese, and I'm 32 years old. Until recently, my family described me with the same dismissive sentence whenever anyone asked what I did for a living. She fixes trucks. They never called me an engineer. They never called me an entrepreneur. They certainly never called me successful. In my family, that word belonged to my twin brother, Liam. Liam and I were born 7 minutes apart, but growing up, you would have thought those 7 minutes separated the golden child from the mistake our parents had been forced to keep. He was the athlete, the honor roll student, the charming son who knew how to shake hands with adults and make teachers remember his name. I was the girl who came home with grease beneath her fingernails because I had spent the afternoon dismantling a lawnmower to understand why it wouldn't start. When we were little, none of that mattered. At 6 years old, Liam and I were inseparable. We built forts in the living room, raced bicycles down the driveway, and stayed outside until our mother shouted from the porch that dinner was getting cold. Whenever Liam's bicycle chain slipped, he brought it to me. "You can fix anything," he once said as he watched me put it back into place. I remembered those words long after he forgot them. Everything changed in middle school. Liam discovered football, popularity, and the attention that came with being admired. I discovered machines. Machines made sense to me. They didn't flatter you and then humiliate you in front of relatives. They didn't decide your value based on your clothes or your job title. If something failed, there was always a reason. You only had to be patient enough to find it. When I was 14, I rebuilt my first carburetor from an old truck our neighbor planned to scrap. I spent the entire weekend cleaning each component, replacing worn seals, and studying diagrams from a library manual. When I finished, I carried it into the living room like a trophy. "Mom, Dad, look what I rebuilt!" Liam's football highlights were playing on television for what must have been the third time that afternoon. My mother glanced at the carburetor for barely a second. "That's nice, sweetheart. Look, Liam's about to make that tackle again." My father didn't even turn around. "Put that greasy thing away before you stain the carpet." I stood there holding 3 days of work while everyone cheered for something they had already watched twice. Liam finally looked over his shoulder. "Maybe she can fix the lawnmower next." My parents laughed. I laughed too, because at 14, sometimes laughing with the people hurting you feels less humiliating than letting them know they succeeded. That moment became the pattern of my life. Liam achieved things. I tinkered. Liam was ambitious. I was going through a phase. Liam wore pressed shirts and collected trophies. I came home smelling like steel, gasoline, and welding smoke. At nearly every family gathering, my mother asked the same question. "When are you going to get a real job, Jerry?" My father would tilt his head with that familiar, disappointed expression. Liam usually sat nearby with a smug little smile, sipping whatever expensive drink he had recently discovered. "Not everyone wants success, Mom," he once said. "Some people are comfortable staying small." He spoke gently, almost sympathetically, which somehow made it worse. By the time we graduated from college, Liam had a business degree and a corporate position waiting for him at Ridgeline Motors, one of the largest truck manufacturers in the country. I had an engineering degree, several unfinished prototypes, and a business plan nobody in my family wanted to hear. That Thanksgiving, Liam arrived in a brand new Audi wearing a gray cashmere sweater. He placed his keys beside his plate with a logo facing upward. "Director of Corporate Public Relations," he announced, before dinner had even been served. "Corner office, expense account, company car." My mother pressed a hand to her chest. "We always knew you were destined for something important." My father raised his wine glass. "To Liam's future." Everyone drank. Then Liam looked across the table at me. "What about you, Jerry? Still crawling under old trucks?" Several relatives laughed. "I'm developing custom systems for expedition and tactical vehicles," I explained. "Suspension platforms, reinforced structures, modular storage systems. There's a real market for specialized off-road builds." My Aunt Cheryl patted my wrist like I was a child describing an imaginary career. That sounds creative, dear. But wouldn't you prefer stability, benefits, a retirement plan? Jerry is still figuring herself out, my mother said. I know exactly what I want, I replied. She continued as if I hadn't spoken. She'll get tired of getting dirty eventually. Liam leaned back in his chair. I could probably get you into Ridgeline's mailroom, or maybe maintenance. You'd fit in there. My father laughed louder than anyone. Even my cousin Ethan, who had always been kind to me, only lowered his eyes and stayed silent. I finished dinner without defending myself. That night, I returned to the garage behind my rented duplex and sat beside the suspension prototype I had been developing for extreme terrain vehicles. It could absorb impacts that would destroy most factory systems. When my family looked at it, they saw scattered metal and wasted time. I saw possibility. I placed my palm against the cold steel and made myself a promise. I would stop explaining my worth to people determined not to understand me. I would build something so real that their approval would no longer matter. A month later, my closest friend, Wyatt Keller, and I founded Talon Expeditions. We started in a cramped garage in Pinterest with secondhand tools, one unreliable welder, and more confidence than money. We transformed ordinary four-wheel drive vehicles into machines capable of surviving extreme terrain, disaster zones, military deployments, and long-distance expeditions. The first 6 months nearly destroyed us. I sold my car to buy fabrication equipment. Wyatt maxed out 2 credit cards for a used CNC machine. We worked 18-hour days and slept on folding cots inside the garage because every dollar went back into the business. Some nights, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while my mother's voice repeated inside my head. This garage business is running you into the ground. It isn't too late to ask Liam for help. Maybe they were right. Maybe I had confused stubbornness with courage. Then morning came, and I got back to work. Our first major breakthrough was a modular aircraft-grade aluminum roof system that could carry expedition equipment and tactical gear without requiring permanent vehicle modifications. It could be reconfigured in minutes and withstand more weight than anything else on the market. We posted several photographs in online overlanding forums. Within days, our inbox began filling with inquiries. The first $10,000 order felt unreal. Wyatt and I drove to the beach after midnight, sat on the hood of his truck, and drank warm soda while planning all the things Talon might become. Then, a search and rescue organization ordered a $45,000 custom vehicle. That project nearly ruined us. We underestimated material costs, redesigned the suspension twice, and made almost no profit. But the finished truck exceeded every test. The rescue team posted footage online, and suddenly professional expedition teams, government agencies, and military contractors started calling. By the end of the first year, we had hired 3 fabricators and moved into a small industrial shop. By year 3, Talon had 20 employees working inside a 20,000-square-foot facility. The first morning we moved in, I stood in the center of the building, listening to my footsteps echo against the walls. "We built this," Wyatt said beside me. I wanted to call my parents. A childish part of me still imagined my mother walking through those doors, seeing the machines, the prototypes, and the team, then finally looking at me the way she looked at Liam. I waited until Talon secured its first major government contract, more than $2 million, to design specialized desert response vehicles. Then I called her. "Mom, Talon just landed a government contract." There was a brief pause. "That's nice, sweetheart." My smile faded. Then her voice suddenly brightened. "Did I tell you Liam was nominated for an industry marketing award? They're flying him to Chicago and putting him in a 5-star hotel." "No," I said quietly. "You didn't." "I'm so proud of him. You should call and congratulate him." Through the glass wall of my office, I could see my employees opening bottles of sparkling cider. Some of them were crying because that contract meant job security, expansion, and futures they hadn't dared to imagine. My mother was still talking about Liam. That was the moment I finally understood. It didn't matter what I built. It didn't matter how many people trusted my work or how many lives our vehicles might save. My family had already decided which twin deserved to be seen. So I stopped asking them to look. After that phone call, something inside me finally went quiet. Not because the pain disappeared, because I stopped expecting people to become someone they had never been. From then on, I never brought up talent expeditions at family dinners again. If my parents wanted to believe I still spent my days fixing rusty pickup trucks in a tiny garage, I let them. Meanwhile, Talon refused to stop growing. Our search and rescue program led to military inquiries. Military inquiries led to government contracts. Government contracts attracted private expedition companies from Europe, Australia, and South America. Within 5 years, we had expanded to more than 50 employees across 3 facilities. Annual revenue climbed past $30 million. We built our own testing grounds where vehicles crawled over boulder fields, crossed deep water, and survived punishment that destroyed factory suspensions. Every bolt, every weld, every design carried my fingerprints. Yet every Sunday dinner sounded exactly the same. Liam talked about executive retreats, corporate conferences, golf with senior leadership, new watches, new suits, new promotions. Our parents listened like he was reading from scripture. One Christmas, Liam proudly announced that he'd had lunch with the company's chief financial officer. "They're grooming me for executive leadership." My mother nearly cried. "I always knew you were destined for greatness." My father lifted his glass. "To Liam." Everyone toasted. Then my mother smiled at me. "Jerry, have you ever considered going back to school? Maybe an MBA like your brother? It's never too late to start a real career." Around the table, everyone waited for my answer. None of them knew I had signed the lease for Talon's 3rd facility that very morning. None of them knew annual revenue had already exceeded $20 million. None of them knew an industry magazine had just interviewed me about the future of military expedition vehicles. I simply smiled. "I'm happy where I am." Uncle Dave chuckled. "Still fixing trucks, huh?" I passed the mashed potatoes. No explanation, no defense, no point. The funny part was that my family wasn't just ignoring my success. They were unknowingly celebrating it. Because one of Talon's biggest customers happened to be Ridgeline Motors, Liam's company. It started after one of Ridgeline's engineers visited our booth at an off-road trade show. He loved our suspension systems. Then another engineer requested a demonstration. One meeting became another. Soon, we were designing complete premium off-road packages exclusively for Ridgeline's flagship trucks. They handled manufacturing and nationwide distribution. We designed nearly everything customers were paying extra for. Those Adventure Elite packages Liam constantly bragged about? Ours. The reinforced suspension? Ours. Roof systems, recovery equipment, storage modules, communication mounts, even several engineering patents? Ours. Customers happily paid nearly $30,000 extra for those upgrades. Ridgeline made millions. So did Talon. Liam never knew. He spent years proudly marketing products built around my engineering while still telling everyone I played with old trucks. Sometimes I wondered whether fate was laughing harder than I was. Wyatt certainly was. One afternoon, Liam unexpectedly visited our facility. It was the only time he had ever stepped inside one of my shops. He walked through the front entrance wearing pressed slacks, polished shoes, and sunglasses that probably cost more than my first welding machine. The timing couldn't have been worse. Our engineering team was testing a new roll cage design under enormous hydraulic pressure. The shop echoed with grinders, welders, compressors, and shouted measurements. I stood beside the test rig, wearing safety glasses, welding gloves, and a shirt stained with steel dust. Liam looked horrified. So, this is where you work? Yep. He carefully stepped around a puddle of coolant as though touching it might permanently damage his expensive shoes. It's interesting. I almost laughed. Interesting. Around him stood 15 engineers, fabricators, former military mechanics, CAD designers, and technicians building vehicles worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is your garage? He asked. Our workshop. How many people work here? 5? About 15. He looked surprised before quickly masking it. Seems excessive for repairing trucks. Wyatt walked past, carrying blueprints, but wisely stayed out of the conversation. Liam wandered through the building, barely looking at the vehicles themselves. Instead, he noticed the grease, the welding sparks, the loud music, the tattoos on several fabricators. He had already decided what kind of place this was. What exactly do you build? I looked toward a nearly completed tactical rescue vehicle, destined for a government client. I could have explained the military communication systems, the reinforced chassis, the proprietary suspension geometry, the classified testing protocols. Instead, I shrugged. Mostly trucks. He nodded confidently. I figured. Then came the offer. If you ever want to do something more professional, let me know. He smiled generously. I could probably recommend you for a maintenance supervisor position at Ridgeline. I almost admired the confidence. He was standing inside a company that would eventually earn more than $40 million a year, offering its owner an entry-level management job. I'll keep that in mind. He left after 10 minutes. The second the door closed, Wyatt burst into laughter. Does he seriously have no idea? No. He knows Ridgeline is negotiating with Talon. I know. He signs marketing emails with his own name. I know. And he still thinks you repair junk pickups? I nodded. He never asks questions. Wyatt shook his head. One day, that's going to explode. I wasn't so sure. At that point, I honestly believed my family could watch me launch a rocket into orbit and still ask whether I'd considered finding a steady office job. Months later, Ridgeline officially expanded our partnership. The premium off-road line would now be branded as Talon Edition. The agreement was worth $16 million annually before royalties. It transformed Talon from an aftermarket builder into one of Ridgeline's primary engineering partners. For weeks, Liam's name appeared on corporate emails announcing Ridgeline's exciting collaboration with the innovative engineering leaders at Talon Expeditions. I'd read those emails during board meetings. Then my phone would buzz. A text from Liam. Mom's worried about you. You really should think about finding stable employment. I usually smiled before setting my phone face down. One evening, after another exhausting family dinner filled with lectures about responsibility and adulthood, I almost opened our financial reports. I almost showed everyone exactly who owned Talon. I almost told Liam his biggest marketing success existed because of the sister he kept humiliating. But something stopped me. Not fear. Patience. Because deep down, I had the strange feeling the truth would reveal itself exactly when it needed to. I had no idea that moment was only a few weeks away. And when it arrived, it wouldn't just expose Liam. It would completely destroy the story my family had spent 32 years telling themselves. The invitation to Ridgeline Motors' annual industry gala sat on my desk for nearly a week. Normally, Wyatt represented Talon at corporate events. He enjoyed networking. I preferred spending my evenings in the shop. But 2 days before the event, Wyatt came down with the flu. You'll have to go, he groaned over the phone. They've been trying to meet you in person for years. I sighed. I'll sign the paperwork, shake a few hands, and leave. That was the plan. It lasted less than an hour. The ballroom looked exactly like every corporate event I'd ever avoided. Luxury lighting, concept trucks rotating beneath spotlights. executives congratulating one another for products they had never actually built. I wore dark jeans, work boots, and a simple blue button-down. No designer watch, no expensive suit, just me. Across the room, Liam looked exactly as I expected. Tailored tuxedo, perfect haircut, crystal glass in one hand, surrounded by managers laughing a little too hard at everything he said. He hadn't noticed me yet. Good. I spent nearly an hour talking with Ridgeline's engineering department about our newest suspension geometry and the next generation Talon Edition package. Those conversations energized me. Engineers asked real questions. They cared about performance, numbers, testing, solutions. Then I heard a familiar voice behind me. Jerry? I turned around. Liam stared at me as though I'd wandered into the wrong building. What are you doing here? Before I could answer, the vice president beside me smiled. You two know each other? Liam laughed. My twin sister somehow managed to get invited. Several people chuckled politely. She owns a little garage outside Pinecrest. His smile widened. Mostly repairs old trucks and installs aftermarket accessories. The vice president looked confused. Wait. He turned toward me. Jerry Reese? That's right. The founder of Talon Expeditions? I nodded. Yes. Everything stopped. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was simply silent. The kind of silence that arrives when reality collides with someone's carefully protected illusion. Liam blinked twice. No. The vice president laughed. I've been trying to meet you for 3 years. Another executive joined us. Jerry, your suspension systems changed our entire off-road division. Someone shook my hand. Another thanked me for attending. Within seconds, a small crowd formed around us. Liam remained frozen. Then he forced a laugh. There must be some mistake. Nobody answered. My sister owns a little modification shop. He looked at me. Tell them. I simply folded my arms. This has to be another Jerry Reese. The head of product development stepped forward. There isn't another Jerry Reese, he smiled warmly. She's the founder and CEO of Talon Expeditions. Someone added, the engineering behind the Talon Edition trucks is entirely hers. Liam's smile disappeared. His face drained of color. He looked around the room hoping someone would laugh. Nobody did. Instead, the CEO of Ridgeline walked over after hearing the commotion. There you are. He shook my hand firmly. Jerry, congratulations again on last quarter. He looked toward Liam. You know each other? My sister, Liam whispered. The CEO looked genuinely surprised. I had no idea. He smiled. You should be incredibly proud. Liam swallowed. The CEO continued. Talon generated more than $42 million last year. We've spent 2 years trying to acquire her company. Our off-road division wouldn't exist in its current form without her. Every sentence landed like another hammer blow. I watched Liam's entire identity unravel. For years, he had measured success using job titles, offices, and expensive watches. Now every executive in the room was congratulating the sister he had spent decades calling a failure. Instead of accepting reality, he snapped. No! His voice echoed across the ballroom. She's lying! Several conversations stopped. My sister works in a garage. He pointed directly at me. She fixes trucks. Nobody moved. Tell them! His breathing became faster. Tell them you're not Talon! I calmly answered. I founded Talon Expeditions with Wyatt Keller in 2017. We engineer every Talon Edition package sold through Ridgeline. We also manufacture the specialized military platforms for our government contracts. The room remained perfectly still. Liam's face turned bright red. You've been pretending this whole time. I looked directly into his eyes. You never asked. That answer hurt him more than anything else could have. Years of ignored conversations, years of ridicule, years of assumptions, reduced to 4 words. You never asked. Then came the sentence everyone remembered. Get a real job, Liam shouted. Everyone knows you're nothing but a glorified mechanic pretending to be a businesswoman. Silence. No one laughed. Several executives exchanged uncomfortable looks. One manager quietly whispered, "Should someone help him?" The CEO spoke before anyone else could. Liam, his voice was calm. I don't think you understand. He placed one hand on my shoulder. The engineering innovations that saved our off-road division belong to Jerry. Our largest growth strategy exists because of Talon. This company values her partnership enormously. Liam looked like someone had pulled the floor out from beneath him. Without another word, he walked away. Then faster. Then almost running. By the time he reached the ballroom doors, every conversation had already resumed without him. No one followed. I stayed another hour discussing future projects and international expansion. No speeches, no revenge, no celebration. Reality had spoken loudly enough. When I finally drove home, my phone began vibrating before I even reached the highway. Missed call. Another. By midnight, there were over 20. Text messages flooded my screen. Why didn't you tell us? How long have you been lying? We need to talk. Call me immediately. Then came Liam's messages. First angry, then confused, then strangely supportive. I always knew you had talent. We should work together. This could be amazing for the family. Around 2 a.m, my security cameras detected movement outside my house. Liam, still wearing his tuxedo. His tie hung loose. His hair was a mess. He pounded on my front door. Jerry! Open the door! I know you're inside. I watched through the security app while lying in bed. Muted, calm, detached. For nearly 10 minutes he yelled. Then he sat on the porch steps with his face buried in his hands. Before leaving, he threw an empty bottle toward my garage. It shattered harmlessly against the driveway. The next morning my parents called, then my aunts, then cousins who hadn't spoken to me in years. Everyone suddenly wanted a relationship. Everyone suddenly remembered I existed. I listened to none of it. Instead, at 7 o'clock sharp, I called an emergency executive meeting. By noon, our attorneys had prepared termination documents. By 4 that afternoon, Talon's $16 million partnership with Ridgeline Motors officially ended. A replacement manufacturer had already signed the agreement. Our engineers would begin transferring production immediately. I sent one final email to Ridgeline's CEO. Professional, respectful, brief. Liam was copied on every page. No explanation, no accusations, only business. That single decision changed the entire industry. Within days, Ridgeline's stock dropped. Trade publications reported the collapse of the Talon partnership. The off-road program that Liam had proudly marketed suddenly lost its biggest competitive advantage. His department became the first casualty. The golden son, who had spent years telling me to get a real job, had just watched his own career disappear because he never bothered to learn what his little sister actually did.